Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast powered by eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday the 12th of February and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. This is episode 8, season 8 of Motor Trade Radio, bringing you all the chatter that matters. And once again, we've gathered together this week's big car retailing stories across the franchised and independent sectors for you to enjoy all in one place, on demand, on your podcast feed. And Phil, you may have noticed that today's show has a bit of a theme, bit of a running theme on it.
It does a little bit, doesn't it? There's been, the figures are out this week for the used car performance for 2021. So yeah, very much that, like you say, that used car theme this week, Curtis.
Yeah, a bit of a used car focus. So we'll scoop up all the stories because there's quite a few. There's quite a lot going on this week in the used car sector. And just a shout out, if you'd like to get in touch with us, if you'd like to come on the show or send us a press release or just chat to us, then drop us an email at motortraderadio@yahoo.com. Join our LinkedIn group or follow us on Twitter. We're both there.
Definitely. And the Men-Able went down well with Steve last week. Very well received across the social channels. Got some good feedback on that with Steve sharing some of his thoughts on the view of that sort of mental well-being, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he really did get behind that, and he did share it on LinkedIn, on Twitter. So, if you do want to catch last week's Men-Able moments, just check out your podcast feed.
I'm wondering what next week's will be like. I wonder if it's going to have a Valentine's theme to it or something, I suspect. But I'm sure now I've just said that, he'll be keenly listening this morning and making sure that it's got some kind of Valentine's theme to it, I suspect, Curtis, eh?
Well, yeah, he's never one to sort of miss an opportunity.
No, definitely not. So what have we got in the headlines this week? You mentioned used car special, but do you want to run through the headlines that we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the SMMT have released the full year figures for 2021, so we'll take a look at that. There's a story in Fleet World, used vehicle stock to remain hot property in 2022, says Cox Automotive, so you can give us the lowdown on that, Phil. We've also got, and this follows on from a conversation we had with Darren Martin a couple of weeks ago about the best performers in used cars in terms of the top 25 vehicles by appreciation, and there's some fascinating and surprising vehicles in there because it's across MPVs, SUVs, and indeed EVs. And to finish off the used car roundup, we'll be taking a look at a couple of OEM schemes in the used car sector, and also watch out for a new virus that's going around.
Don't mention that one, you get people panicking now.
No. Well, in fact, not a virus, it's more of a hack,
yes,
it? Because,
I'm going to say, everyone's thinking Omnicron and stuff there, Curtis, you've panicked everybody.
Yeah, sorry. Don't panic. We've got an update on a major hack of a major European dealer group. So it's not UK, but there may be ramifications for the UK. So do stay tuned for that.
Yeah, definitely. So heading over to the first story, and as we alluded to at the start there, we have had the used vehicle transactional data out, and that's basically for the fourth quarter of last year, which then in turn gives us the result for the full 12 months of 2021. And we're heading over to AM Online on this, and this is where used car sales grew 11.5% in 2021 despite COVID and supply challenges. And I think the key thing with this is we need to remember that we did have restrictions and lockdowns in 2021, didn't we? And we're still going through the supply challenges from the new vehicle market.
Yeah, so from the stats that the SMMT have released, and it's worth emphasising that all these figures come from the DVLA transaction data. So these are the changes in registration. So Q4 was actually down 3.1%, and that actually contrasts with a record in Q2. So it was a year of ups and downs, but to end the year 11.5% up on 2021 at just over 7.5 million units was pretty good going.
Yeah, definitely. I think, in terms of that, there's been some, with the Welsh challenges, we know that. I think it's definitely clear that a 7.5 million result is a strong result for the UK. And let's not forget, I mean, throughout that financial crash period, I mean, we went as low as the sort of 6.7 million, 6.8 million. So to go through what we've gone through and what we're still facing from a used vehicle sector to result at 7.5 million is a strong result. I mean, we forecast it, the best scenario is going to be just short of that 7.5 million. So I think, it's a great result. But I think we were talking before the show, and I've had a couple of conversations with this week, and this is tracked on change of ownership. It always has been tracked on change of ownership, unlike the new vehicle registrations. We look at this on a regular basis, and there's possibly some nuances that are worth considering that wouldn't normally happen in a normal trading period, and that's because of, one, the level of volume of vehicles that are going direct from the consumer into the trade without buying a car. They're just selling the car. Some consumers are selling the car into the trade and waiting for their new car to arrive, albeit, some time off. And we know there's been some consumer behavioural change throughout the pandemic of how many cars they need and want to keep. And also, what we are aware of is obviously, we've had what people class as the disruptors enter the sector. We know the Kazoos and the others have entered the sector very strongly throughout 2021. But also we've had leasing, contract hire, fleet operations that are not getting new vehicle supply, that have had to enter the used market to replenish some of their older stock because of the mileage and age of it, and getting very expensive in terms of SMR costs, or to replenish fleet levels to meet demand for that leasing, contract hire and rental sector that have been out as competitors against the retail dealers to buy used cars. So there's been some interesting nuances in this performance.
Yeah, and you actually point to a couple of interesting developments there, because traditionally we don't see these major companies buying used cars, but as you say, with the supply of new cars, still a major challenge. They are looking at the used car market in a way that they wouldn't have done before. They wouldn't have considered it.
No, and I think again, we reference it as a year of the used car, but it's how many times you can reference it as the year of the used car. It's been on a couple of years now, hasn't it? And I know Darren from Cap HPI referenced that, didn't he, a few times? But it's still a strong market, but we cannot take it away. A 7.5 million result for 2021 is still a strong result for the full year, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And overall, the used car market, it was still down 5.5% on those pre-pandemic 5-year averages, but it is a strong showing. Within the figures, naturally, the record demand for used battery electric vehicles, albeit still from a low point, but demand was up 119.2%. So that's equated to just over 40,000 transactions, and that's a part of the market that we're going to see incremental growth from again this year.
Definitely. Petrol, interestingly, was number one at 4.2 million, ahead of diesel at 3 million. So you can see where diesel is certainly losing its dominance in the share, not just in new but also a used vehicle marketplace as well.
Yeah, and hybrid's still a long way ahead of both plug-in hybrid and electric, because that came in third place with just under 135,000 units.
But we know this will change though, because I think what is clear, diesel has been damaged for many years now with the Dieselgate and other things taking place there. So that used vehicle marketplace in that used vehicle park is reducing in terms of that age dominance of diesel vehicles. So I suspect when we get Devon back on to talk to him about used values, it'd be worth talking to him about this in terms of what he sees in terms of the valuations by fuel type going forward, as the market share of used vehicles entering the used vehicle park reduces in terms of petrol and diesel.
Yeah. Now, next headline is from Fleet World, and the headline is "Used vehicle stock to remain hot property in 2022," says Cox Automotive. So this particular story shows the used vehicle sector will see another year of demand outstripping supply as stock remains hot property while the new market continues to recover. So very much following on from some of the topics we discussed in the first story. So what are the key takeaways from this, Phil?
Yeah, and I think, thanks to Natalie Middleton that has covered this in the social space as well as in Fleet World, and thanks for that support, Natalie. I think with this is that we do believe that we talked about the new vehicle supply being a challenge. I think the view is that will continue throughout the first half of this year, if not into the third quarter of this year. So therefore, used vehicles will remain the dominant player, with focus from the retailers. We think that the values will remain fairly stable as demand continues. We are forecasting for the full year in excess of 7.7 million at the best case scenario. So we do forecast that we're expecting to see an increase in transactional used cars throughout 2022. Maybe back end focused, it may be H2 focused. I think what we have shared in the release is that the year did get off a little bit slower than many may have expected in terms of key wholesale indicator performance. Cap clean, percentage of cap clean has been slow. We saw that with a zero level movement at 3 year 60 going from January into February. Percentage of first time conversions, a little bit slower than what we saw throughout last year, at the back end of last year, but it's just starting to rise a little bit now as some of the bigger players are back into the market and starting to look for stock. And as everybody is agreeing, a lot of the commentators on the sector is that there's no tsunami of used cars around the corner. There's no reason that we're seeing a massive influx of used cars, but as we know from what we mentioned earlier, the focus is very much on used cars for 2022 currently. We just need to keep that consumer demand continuing. And as we said, there's no reason for that business, fleet, rental, contract hire sector to slow down. They'll still need stock. And interesting, again, me and you, Curtis, chatting before the show that, that holiday market is now picking back up again, so there's going to be need for vehicles for consumers and in terms of travel. So it's going to be an interesting year again.
Yeah, and I was interested in what you said about your forecast for the year, top forecast being 7.7 million. If we were to hit that, how does that compare with some of the pre-pandemic years? Because I know you keep these figures in your head.
I mean, if you look at the 2001 to 2019 average, that would be an increase of 4.4% on that period of averages. So, we know that does take in account some of those lower months, lower annual performances throughout that financial crash. So I think all things considered, if we do exceed that 7.5 million up to that 7.7 million this year, I think you've got to say that from a sector recovery, that is a very quick recovery in terms of performance, isn't it? To increase a 4.4% on that sort of 10-year average is a serious recovery.
Yeah, and the biggest market we've seen has been just over the 8 million mark, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. I mean, we've achieved as high as sort of 8.3 million. Yeah. I'm not sure we may ever return to that market, because you do need new cars. And as many people are saying, and I concur that, we are seeing in that 0 to 6, 0 to 12 month market, that's where the real shortage of stock is. Now, that's because of the loss of 1.6 million vehicles that we've lost over the last 18 months. Now, as we go through time, we'll start to see that impact throughout the age profiles as we go forward, because those new cars that have never been registered will never return to the used vehicle park. So this isn't a short-term impact from the new car registration loss. This will continue for some years.
And staying with used cars, over at Car Dealer, the headline is, here are the used cars that have gone up the most in value in 12 months. Now, it's worth your while heading over to this story. Go on the website and have a look at it, because there's actually a top 25 of the highest appreciating cars over the course of last year. We're not going to run through all of them, no. but we will pick off some of the top performers. And as I said earlier, we did actually cover this just a couple of weeks ago, because every time Darren comes on, Darren Martin from Cap HPI, well, certainly for the last 2-3 months, we've asked him, how's the Vauxhall Zafira performing? Because that's become the benchmark car, or pretty much the benchmark car for appreciation. So it's starting at the top. So the most appreciating car of the year, last year, according to Cap HPI, and a bit of a surprise, this one, is the Toyota Auris hybrid. And that's appreciated by, wait for it, 68.8%, which equates to £6,904. So a bit of a surprise there at number one.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine being in that position, that you've got one of them and you don't want it, and you're selling it to the market, you don't need to replace it? Yeah, it's what you never have guessed that one. I don't care who you are in this sector, as any analysts you want. You did not predict that the Auris would go up by just short of £7,000. That was not a prediction.
And I'd also suggest that it's probably the first time the Toyota Auris has ever actually hit number one in anything.
Or gone up, yes.
Yeah, gone up or achieved number one. And number two is our good friend, the Vauxhall Zafira. So that went up by 64.9%, which equated to £5,861. So no surprise there, because Darren did keep us in the loop on that one.
And you'll love the next one. Now, love it or hate it, Marmite car for definite, is the Kia Soul, but the electric, the 14 to 19 model year electric Kia Soul has gone up by just short of £7,000. So it's gone up 64% over that period and gone up by £6,850. I mean, what's the average price of that car? I mean, well, by calculation, it's less than that value, because it's gone up by 64%. So, I mean, we could go on at this, couldn't we? Because there are seriously some very, very interesting performers in this top 25 that they've published.
Yeah. Can I tell you about number 4?
Yeah, go on.
It's the Vauxhall Combo Life. Now, believe it or not, that actually appreciated by 63.3%, which was £5,215. And the Combo Life, it's a big old bus. It's a supersize MPV, and you don't see that many on the roads, because it was built effectively as a van, but that's gone up 63.3%.
Yeah, so I mean, some interesting figures, and again, when we get Darren back on next month, we'll pick his brains on a few and get his view on it. But I'm sure he'll give you a little bit more context as to why they've gone up so much, and why those vehicles. Is it that they had a very low base point? Is it that the market was so short of stock that actually anything they had became demand? And therefore the prices rose. So we'll have a chat with Darren about it in a little bit more detail and pick his brains on it. But interesting, that Vauxhall Zafira. You never thought that one would go away, did you? But it's still there, hanging on.
We'll find out where it is next month. You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by eBay Motors Group. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed.
So sticking with used cars, but going over to the manufacturer world now, and going over to motortrader.com, and I don't know with this one, Curtis. Is it that we didn't know that they didn't have a approved used car program? I don't know. How many manufacturers don't have a used car program? Maybe more than we know. But this is the Suzuki launches approved used car program. And we'll have to get Dale on again sometime. I mean, I know we've given him a shout out before, and we'll drop a note, Dale, if you are listening this morning, and we'll get you back on the podcast. It'll be interesting to chat through just generally of what you're seeing in the world of Suzuki, because you've been up to a lot of things recently. But this is that the Suzuki GB has launched a new approved used car program, which provides a more structured and clearer process in helping consumers find their used car of choice. So a few features on this one, but I'm not sure how different it is from other used car programs.
Yeah, I suppose it's a matter of Suzuki actually rolling out their own program, and clearly they didn't have one before, which is kind of, I guess, a surprise, because there aren't many brands now that don't have some form of approved scheme. But the cover looks pretty good, so sort of minimum 12-month warranty, and that comes with roadside assistance. There's MOT protection cover, multi-point check of all major mechanical and electrical components. So, pretty standard fare. But it's just a matter of this enables customers to buy with confidence. Now, we know from all the consumer reports, Suzuki does incredibly well in terms of satisfaction. Suzuki customers are probably amongst the most satisfied consumers out there, and these vehicles are pretty solid. So an approved scheme makes perfect sense. So it'd be interesting to see how they progress with that.
And as you say, I mean, they have a fantastic relationship with the dealer network, don't they? I mean, the synergy between Suzuki and their dealers is strong. And the bit on this one is that 150 contribution towards the next service if due after 3 months of the sale date. So, again, helping the consumer with that confidence, £150 towards their next service. So, I've never, in all honesty, I've never heard that offered by a manufacturer before, an approved scheme. So that is, in my view, fairly unique to what Suzuki are offering. So it's an interesting one. But again, it can only compound that strength that they've got in the used car market with their dealer network.
And staying with manufacturer schemes, AM Online, Volvo begins direct-to-consumer used car sales through new online portal. So this is Volvo offering its internal cars. It's the cars that the company runs as a fleet, but they're offering them direct to customers online. So interesting development here. And I'm wondering if this ties in with sort of agency model thinking.
Yeah, well, we know that Christian is an avid listener to the podcast, and I'm sure he will be listening again this morning. So again, probably a built up. We've got our questions already lined up, I think, Curtis, for Christian when we get him back on. But again, we know that this is a key for Volvo. I mean, they've been operating in that used vehicle space for a while in terms of online valuations, etc. So, it's a great addition to their portfolio. Where it sits in terms of, like you say, that whole agency, direct to consumer, that whole e-commerce proposition that they've got, then let's try and not guess on that one. We can probably ask Christian, and hopefully he will share with their plans to what happens and where the dealer sits within all of this as well.
And if you're curious as to where these cars are actually coming from, a lot of them will be coming from the Care by Volvo, which is their subscription offering, as well as their own company cars. And they do flag these up as being their sort of newest used cars. So these are going to be hot properties when they hit the market, because as we've mentioned and alluded to, there's this ongoing shortage of used cars. So the newer, the more in demand they'll be. Definitely.
So the final story of this week, and we don't go to Auto Retail Agenda too often, but they've got a great story this week, and like you mentioned it at the start there, that this is ML Frey, email hacker warning. So this is ML Frey, and Curtis will explain who they are in a second, but this is about a warning that there is some malware email hacking taking place, and they're putting a warning out to the network to be on guard for this, aren't they?
Yeah, so just a little bit of background on Emil Frey, because we do talk about them, probably a couple of times a year when the top 50 European dealers is published, and that's produced by ICDP, and it's published by Automotive News Europe. But Emil Frey, they are the biggest dealer group in Europe. They're based in Switzerland, but they have 816, so that's 816 franchise points across Europe and represent 44 brands. So they are absolutely massive. So this story was of interest to us because it's the biggest dealer group in Europe, and it's been targeted by a hacker group called Hive. So if they're targeting Emil Frey, you don't know who they're targeting next. So it's really a sort of awareness thing. And what's happened is that more than 220 megabytes of documents, including customers' personal data, have already been published on this file sharing website. And according to this story, Hive is planning to publish a further 300 gigabytes of data. So this is quite a serious issue.
It is, isn't it? I mean, of all the groups to go for, I mean, you couldn't pick a one, could you, really? No, I mean, they are, as you say, they're one of the biggest groups. So they're, I mean, as you just said there, the size of that data file. And they're saying that the hacker attack on the MLFA group continues to develop, and now the responsible hacker group wants to publish the stolen data on the internet. So yeah, I think ML Frey are working on it. I think is the latest from the story, and you know they're saying that the situation is being clarified, and a spokesperson from ML Frey Group, Peter Hugh, told Watson that, and this is at the Digitech release, that the company is currently clarifying whether a personal data breach had occurred as part of the cyber attack. However, he added that the restoration of the IT systems had already been largely completed following the attack, and that customers should be able to be served normally. So, I don't know, I wouldn't like to be the IT people within that business at the minute, would you?
Oh, no. they're going to be a tad busy, aren't they?
Yeah, and you know they're saying if hackers are also threatened to publish the data, this is what's known as double extortion. So not only have they attacked the systems, they're actually threatening to publish them as well. So again, double things there, that they're threatening to publish it as well. So yeah, be interesting to see what comes from that. But I think the warning is to the sector is to be on the guard. That it is key for IT systems to be able to protect against that at the minute. And that's it, Curtis, isn't it? Used cars, everything about used cars. We'll see what the topic of next week is. We'll keep an eye on the headlines. But as always, do keep an eye on the headlines appearing. You know, as we're recording, there's other headlines appearing. So keep your eye on those media platforms that we've mentioned throughout the podcast, and do head over to the stories and check out those, and definitely check out the top 25 highest increased performance that Darren Martin from Capage PI has alluded to, because you may be in for a surprise with one or two of them.
Yeah, and try not to kick yourself for not investing in some of those.
We all are, yes.
Yeah. We're all in the same boat.
Yes.
But that's all for this week. You've been listening to the weekly Motor Trade Radio podcast powered by eBay Motors Group. Many thanks for joining us for all the chatter that matters. We're back again next week. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.